This is Trinity Storm and you are watching second part of What If Naruto Learn a Forgotten Martial Arts. If you enjoy this video, please like, share and subscribe to the channel. Now wasting no more time, let's start the story.
A large podium stood in the town center, with 6 hanging ropes in loops that had recently been knotted to hang their intended victims. They were currently hung around the necks of 6 civilians in town, 3 of whom were Tsunade, Inari, and Tsunade themselves. The reason for this is that they have been the most vocal supporters of Naruto as well as the most vocal opponents of the Leaf since his death was made public, so they are being used as an example to show the others that they must follow suit or face the same fate. The other civilians in town are gathered around the raised podium, unable to do anything but watch as the 6 are hanged in front of them. Some attempted to stop them from killing them, but the leaf nin surrounding the podium prevented anyone from interfering with the execution. 2 of the shinobi present happened to be the infamous Konoha guards, Azumo and Kotetsu. Monsters. You all are fucking monsters. Why are you torturing them? Don't murder them. Please. People of Wave, these criminals have been convicted of withholding S-class details from the Leaf, so they shall be sentenced to death as ordered by our Hokage, a Jonin on the podium declared. Liars. You invade our country and expect us to believe your nonsense. We don't care if the Leaf burns in hell. Killers. Traitors. Scum. Silence. Yelled the Jonin, who used his killing intent to keep the crowd quiet. The execution will now begin. He nods to the executioner, who nods back and grabs the lever, allowing the floors beneath the 6 people chosen to be executed to be released. Stop. Allow my son to leave. He has nothing to do with this. Tsunade cried and begged, while Tsunade glared and cursed at the leaf nin, and Inari sobbed away in fear of his unavoidable death. A loud bang fills the air just as the executioner is about to pull the lever. The town falls silent as no one moves, and the executioner collapses onto his side with a hole in his chest after what seems like hours but is actually seconds. Then everything went to hell. Wave citizens scattered with terrified screams, while the leaf nin braced themselves for a fight because they expected one. What was that? Exclaimed a Chunin, his head jerking back from a sudden projectile that struck him in the head with enough force to break his neck, courtesy of a strange hooded man who was calmly walking towards them while chucking a few rocks up and down in his hand. The leaf nin either widened their eyes or gasped when they saw the man who had managed to throw a small rock with enough force to not only break a man's neck but also penetrate through a man's chest through sheer force alone. The Jonin on the podium crosses his arms across his face due to a gust of wind. The wind died away, and when he could see as well as the others, he saw that the strange man had vanished, but he felt something sink into the back of his neck. Die. The stranger murmured before channeling chakra through his fingers sunk into the man's neck and watching as his head exploded out the front of his face. Taking the corpse, he threw it at the other shinobi as both an open challenge and a clear example of what would happen if they tried. He then used his hands to easily cut the ropes, preventing the victims from dying. Thank you, stranger, Tsunade said as he rubbed his throat after removing the rope. It was no problem at all, Tsunade, the stranger said as he yanked the rope from around Inari's neck. How did you get my name? Is it so strange for a friend to know your name? Asked the stranger before removing his hood to reveal his face. Big bro? Muttered Inari, recognizing the blonde hair, despite the fact that it had been cut short, and the whisker marks on his hero's face. Look at you, Inari. You're no longer a runt, Naruto smirked as he rubbed the top of the teen's head in a fatherly manner. Tsunade and Tsunade both looked at him, surprised because they hadn't expected him to come to their aid again after being told, along with the rest of the world, that he had died 7 years ago. They were even more surprised by his threatening appearance, but Tsunade blushed heavily as she examined him and noticed his bulging muscles. She couldn't help but have a brief fantasy about him, but she quickly shook it off. Now go. I don't want anyone to get hurt as a result of the fighting, he told them this while pointing in the direction of their house. We'll talk about it more after I leave here. The family didn't exactly feel safe as he said that, because there were still quite a few Leaf Shinobi surrounding him, and they began to wonder if Naruto would be able to defend against all of them. But they decided to trust him and quickly left the area, leaving Naruto alone to fight the invaders. Naruto noticed two Chunin running behind them to get to the group, but he quickly stopped them by appearing between them in a burst of speed, surprising the Chunin. One of them discovers Naruto's entire arm in his stomach, while the other can only take a step back before Naruto punches him in the gut. Naruto then yanked the dead Chunin off his arm and quickly punched the other one all over his body before kicking him toward a group of shinobi. Before his body hit the ground, it exploded into bloody chunks, his bones becoming short-range shrapnel that hit multiple shinobi in different places. The sharp bits of bone did not cause any life-threatening injuries, but they were painful because they punctured the skin. As they watched their comrade explode in front of them, the Leaf Nin looked at him in shock and horror. "Wait a minute, isn't that Naruto?" Izumo, who recognized the blonde's whisker marks, asked. This astounded everyone who heard it because the demon brat was supposed to be dead for the past 7 years, so they all wondered how the hell he was still alive. And where had he gained such muscle and power? A Jonin notices this as well and smiles because it is a golden opportunity to help their village prepare for the impending war. Plans have changed. Capture the Kaibi and return him to Leaf. Lady Hokage will reward us handsomely if we return to the village with the demon. Naruto walked towards the group while smirking and slowly cracking his knuckles. Every crack made them feel uneasy as he did it, and he silently reveled in the fact that they were frightened by him simply cracking his knuckles. "Give up, demon," said one of the Chunin who remained, brandishing his sword in preparation for the fight they would have. "There are 40 of us and only you, boy. You have no chance of winning this game." Naruto then began to laugh as he stood there, and doubled over as the laughter became louder, causing a tear to fall from his eye. "And what did you find amusing about that?" "It's just funny to me that you're so bad at math," Naruto said, wiping a tear from his eye and calming himself down after laughing so hard. "And what the fuck does that even mean?" "You said there are 40 of you," Naruto said, folding his arms in front of him, "but I only count 20. The 20 shinobi who had been hit by the bone shrapnel exploded into multiple bloody chunks as soon as he said that. Naruto had discovered that because he could use chakra, which Kenshiro couldn't, he could use his Hokuto techniques to overpower and corrupt his enemy's chakra system, forcing them to violently explode as they had just done. Earth Spikes Jutsu in Earth style. Spikes of rock emerge from the ground and strike Naruto square in the chest. The shinobi smiled as they saw this because they thought they had won so easily, but their smiles quickly faded as they saw that the attack hadn't hurt him and instead broke off at the tip, leaving Naruto looking unimpressed. He then charged forward, grabbing the arms of the person who had used the attack on him. He quickly pulled them down so hard that those around him heard bone snapping. He then swung his hand across his neck in a hard, sudden motion, breaking his neck and causing his body to fall forward. Naruto then kicked off his head and grabbed it before it got too far away. He then spun around and threw it so hard that it impaled another shinobi in the chest. He collapsed dead, his head moving inside him the entire time. One of the most important lessons Kenshiro taught him during his training was to be as unpredictable as possible, to use shock and awe to horrify your opponent so that they make mistakes and are far easier to decimate. Retreat. Return to the village. Ordered the last living Jonin, who ran towards the bridge with the majority of the Chunin. "How about the demon?" inquired another Chunin running alongside the Jonin. "We'll need reinforcements from Leaf, but at least we know where he's been hiding all these years." As they neared the end of the bridge connecting Wave Country and Fire Country, they noticed a large shadow hidden in the fog. To their horror, the Kyuubi himself emerged from the fog and roared angrily at them. And before they could even mount any kind of defense, which would ultimately fail because none of them were capable of mitigating the power behind his attack, he blew out a stream of fire that roasted them alive where they stood and burned them down to nothing but ash, which blew into the wind. Back in town, 5 Chunin were still fighting Naruto, completely unaware that they were the last Leaf Nin in the entire country. They all appear tired and sore, except for Naruto, who is grinning at them and has not a single scratch on him, despite the fact that he appears to be winded. In his left hand is a heart that he caught from the current Chunin that he had killed, because once he exploded, Naruto caught the heart in his hand, which he then crushed with his hand while looking at the shinobi who were still there and thought they could take him out on their own. They were all proven wrong in the most heinous way possible. How is the demon brat this powerful? Wasn't he supposed to be helpless? Chunin with a scar down his face exclaimed. Everyone's spines tingle when Naruto smirks, indicating that he's just playing with them and hasn't taken this fight seriously since the beginning. His bulging muscles, combined with his intimidating aura, only served to prove to them that he was the Kaibi in human form. After 7 years, anyone can change. While you and the rest of that rotting village have weakened, I have changed for the better, Naruto laughed. I was free to learn more than your village would allow because I would be too powerful to control otherwise. And they were right to be afraid of my power, given what I've accomplished in such a short period of time. Your forces are defeated, and I will continue to stand no matter what you throw at me. Izumo and Kotetsu grit their teeth in frustration as it becomes clear that Naruto is far stronger than any of them, and both of them are considering making a retreat back to the village as it becomes clear that they will not win here. A Chunin to their left begins to quickly fly through hand seals before they can order a full retreat. Mudslide Jutsu, Earth style. As a wave of mud, the floor liquefies and rushes towards Naruto. A second Chunin uses her own hand signs to fire a bolt of lightning at the wave, making it much more dangerous, and a third Chunin runs around the wave to attack the blonde if the first 2 jutsus fail. The large wave of lightning-enhanced mud threatens to swallow Naruto whole if he doesn't lift his hand up and over himself in a simple karate chopping motion. The wave separates and flows past and through him. He doesn't even blink as it happens. But. How? A Chunin stuttered in fear as he took a few steps back from Naruto. How? I was trained by a man who taught me to do things that most people would consider impossible. What I just did demonstrated this, Naruto responded. He moved to the right to avoid the downward sword slash and grabbed the back of the man's head without even looking. He then began to squeeze his head until his eyes exploded out of his head. He then slammed the body into the ground, turning the head into paste in the process. Screw it. I'm out, yelled a Chunin, turning to make a break for it. Coward. Don't flee. We can win. The only remaining kunoichi of the invasion forces yelled. Izumo and Kotetsu exchanged glances, debating whether they should follow the man's lead. To be honest, I believe he made the correct decision. Unfortunately, the outcome will be the same as if he had stayed and fought. Naruto's enhanced vision allowed him to see clearly through the forestry, and he watched as the Chunin lost his head after running straight into the Kyuubi who was waiting on the outskirts of town for this exact situation and bit his head clean off. Izumo yelled, "Water style, starch syrup binding rope," and spit out a high viscosity water rope. Kotetsu summoned his edge blade and charged at Naruto, hoping to skewer him. The other Chunin holds 2 kunai in a reverse grip and charges in the same manner as Kotetsu. The water rope tightens its grip around Naruto's left arm. Izumo smirked because all he had to do was pull the rope and the demon would lose his arm as a result of his action. His plan is thwarted when Naruto conducts lightning chakra into his arm, which connects to the water rope and conducts off of it. Despite having spent years learning how to use the Hokuto, he was still able to manipulate the elements using chakra. Before Izumo could cancel the jutsu, lightning struck him and shocked him with a current of high-voltage electricity, causing him to scream in pain. He collapsed to the floor in agony, unable to move because the lightning had disrupted his nervous system. Kotetsu swings his sword at Naruto, but Naruto counters by grabbing it with his bare hand and breaking it into various sized pieces with pure strength alone. The other Chunin charges, but Naruto sees her and kicks Kotetsu away, swiping his hand at the kunoichi. She quickly replaces herself with a log that has been cut in half by the chop. Before she can try the same technique again, Naruto throws one of the chopped log's sharpest sides at her and impales her through the chest and through a tree. She clawed in vain at the log impaled in her chest as she bled out from it. Naruto grins at the two remaining Chunin, one of whom is still on the floor, while cracking his neck and knuckles. Come on, people. I have all day and literally thousands of ways to murder you. We're not going to win. We can't fight you, demon. Thought Kotetsu, who is finally beginning to fear for his life after witnessing Naruto's slaughter of the entire invasion force. He reaches into his weapons pouch and pulls out what he requires. He takes out 3 smoke bombs and throws them to the ground. A large cloud of smoke erupts and covers Kotetsu and Izumo, but Naruto just finds it annoying because, even though he can't see them with his eyes, he can sense them as clear as day. He pulsed his chakra, which blew away the smoke to reveal that both Kotetsu and Izumo had vanished, but he could sense that even before he pulsed his chakra. The hunt has begun. Smirking and stretching his legs, Naruto said. He took his time doing so because he wasn't in any hurry here. He got into a runner's position after fully stretching his legs and then charged in the direction he sensed they had gone with enough power and speed to crack the ground beneath him. Kotetsu was jumping from tree to tree with his friend on his shoulder 3 miles away from where Naruto had just been. Damn, I never thought the brat would get so big, Kotetsu said. Izumo couldn't respond because he was still paralyzed by Naruto's lightning attack, but he nods his head in agreement, winced at the difficulty of doing so because his nerves were on fire. They land on another tree branch, only to have it fall when the tree to which it was attached was punched over, making the branch they were aiming for unavailable. Kotetsu quickly jumps off and throws a kunai with wire wrapped around the end. He swings to the floor while still holding Izumo as the kunai sticks into another branch. Both land on their feet, though Izumo has to struggle because his feet are still shot. Hello boys, miss me? Mocked Naruto, who stood there with his arms crossed in front of him, with a big grin on his face. How did you get so close to us? We had an advantage over you? With wide eyes, Kotetsu said. You're talking to the guy who escaped from Anbu when he was 10, the blonde deadpanned. So catching up to the two of you was a piece of cake. Stupid brat. Why didn't you just die, as everyone assumed you would 7 years ago? This time, Naruto loses all sense of humor and instead releases his chakra in a commanding manner. When a pillar of blood-red chakra erupts and pierces the sky above, Izumo and Kotetsu are taken aback. The force has blown nearby trees, and even the wind appears to be attempting to flee the foul chakra. Izumo's body couldn't handle the strain of having so much pressure on him all at once and died as a result. Naruto had quickly charged forward and stabbed Kotetsu in the brain with a single finger laced with his chakra. You are the only survivor of this invasion, Naruto said as Kotetsu stood there dumbfounded. So I want you to leave and return to that corrupt place you call home. When you get back there, please leave a message for Tsunade. He then leaned in and whispered to him the message he wanted him to deliver to her. He pulled his finger out of Kotetsu's head after saying what he needed to say and watched as the now brain-dead shinobi began to walk slowly towards the leaf. He estimated that at his current pace, it would take him at least a week and a half to return and deliver the message he desired. Naruto then sent a shadow clone to Tsunade's house while he headed away from Wave Country because he needed to be somewhere else at the time, but he made a mental note to return because there was someone he wanted to see again here and he was sure she would be glad to see him again. A week and a half later, Leaf Village. Does our force in Wave Country have any news? Tsunade asked Shizune, her assistant, who shakes her head negatively. There has been no word as of yet. Is it possible that they could have been defeated? Tsunade simply shakes her head. That is not possible. At best, Wave Country has a few samurai. The force I sent should have been sufficient to take the country. I'm just curious as to why I haven't received a message from them yet, Tsunade, perplexed, remarked. No one has called in because they're all dead. Tsunade and Shizune look over to the open window, where Jiraiya is sitting with a serious expression. Dead? What happened to them? I gave them a simple mission: capture a small, weak country. How come they failed? Tsunade exclaimed in shock. Jiraiya sighs to himself, knowing that what he's about to say will most likely push her over the edge, but she needs to know because it's important for her to know. Wave did not murder them. According to what I was able to learn from reliable sources, they were murdered by a single man. Both master and apprentice looked at the Toad Sannin with wide eyes and had to study him for any deception because what they had heard was simply too unbelievable to comprehend. You can't be serious, Tsunade says, but Jiraiya nods grimly in agreement. Unfortunately, I am. My spy in Wave told me how the village had been under our control until a single man appeared out of nowhere and decimated our forces. He left no survivors and did an excellent job of ensuring that. What concerns me, however, is the description of the man himself. Tsunade raised an eyebrow as he spoke. Wait a minute, our forces were wiped out by a single man, and we just tried to conquer a neutral country, the doing of which meant the difference between surviving or dying in this upcoming war, and that's what you're worried about? Tsunade asked, her rage suppressed. The other villages have most likely heard about Leaf's attempt on Wave and are preparing to retaliate even more than before. You'd be interested to know that the perpetrator is not from Wave country. After hearing that piece of information, Tsunade and her assistant lose their train of thought. A human with that kind of power is just curious about the elemental countries? That is not a pleasant thought. If what I'm hearing is true, he must be a mercenary, and we need to find him so he can assist us in the upcoming war, Tsunade pondered. Did you get a description of the man? Asked the slug Sannin, hopeful. It would be so much easier if she could find whoever that person is and capture him, either by force or by paying the appropriate fee. They might even be able to persuade this man to establish a powerful clan in their village. I'm sorry, but I didn't receive a description. But I do know they're men. Because the writing was squiggly at best, my spy was in a hurry to send me the message. My contact has gone quiet since then, so he's either hiding or... He was killed off, Tsunade said, folding her fingers together and resting her chin on them. Lady Tsunade, you must bring this to the council's attention. They must be aware of the development of the attack force as well as this man who is out there with the ability to easily decimate our forces, Shizune stated. Tsunade, as much as she wants to say no, can't deny that the council needs to know. This is too large for her to simply brush under the rug. You know they'll want to send more people to Wave to retake it, Jiraiya predicted, knowing exactly what the elders would want. We will not try anything for the time being. We've lost enough ninja already, and I don't want to see any more casualties so soon, because we'll need all the help we can get to win this war. While we may not have the numbers to defend against 2 villages on our own, we do have some of the world's best strategists, so we can still survive if we plan this carefully. You should also be aware that Iron Country samurai have been hired to protect Wave Country, led by Mifune himself. And why are they doing that? Tsunade wondered, surprised. They are usually neutral in these conflicts. So, what are they doing there? They have taken it upon themselves to protect a neutral country like themselves, primarily because we attempted to invade a neutral country. A shinobi who had stormed into the room yelled, Lady Tsunade. What is it? Tsunade demanded angrily, having just stormed into her office unannounced. Kotetsu has returned to the village and requires immediate medical attention. What? Exclaimed Tsunade as she stood up, we need to get him to the hospital right away. They all rushed out of the office because Kotetsu could tell them who had killed their forces. They arrived on the scene quickly and were horrified by what they saw. Kotetsu was crawling towards the Hokage tower on the ground, But once she was in his sights, he turned around and began crawling toward her. He had lost an arm and a leg to wolves on the long slow walk back to the village, but despite losing so much blood, his body continued to move forward because that was Naruto's order. Kotetsu? Tsunade inquired as she channeled medical chakra into her hands and used them to heal what she could at the time to prepare him for the surgery that he would undoubtedly require. How did you end up? Kotetsu gargled something he couldn't understand. So Tsunade leaned in closer to hear what he was saying. He gargled what he had previously gargled, and when he finished, his head exploded, covering her entire upper body in blood and brain matter. Tsunade stood up, and those around her couldn't tell if it was from what was said to her or the fact that she was just next to a head that had literally exploded in her face. Are you okay, Tsunade? Shizune inquired. What did he tell you? He told me, Tsunade stuttered, that Naruto is still alive. The silence that followed lasted quite a while after she said that. Iwa. Naruto had walked to Iwa to deal with a problem before it got out of hand later on. He'd walked there from Wave Country at a quick but steady pace because he was in a hurry, but not a big one. As he approached the front gates leading into the village, he was stopped by several Iwa shinobi on guard. Naruto couldn't help but smirk as he saw this because he had been told for most of his shinobi career that Iwa was the type of village that valued quantity over quality, and the fact that they had so many shinobi on guard duty at the front gate only confirmed that. But, given that they were preparing for war, perhaps he was overthinking it. State your business here, a Jonin with an eye patch over his left eye said. I'm here to speak with Tsuchikage, Naruto explained, and if you don't go get him in the next few seconds, I'll go through you to meet him. You dare to threaten us, another Jonin said. Do you have any idea who we are? So I'll take that as a no on retrieving your cage. Am I correct in my assumption? You're dead right, we're not going to get him. Naruto only sighed as he stood there for a split second before disappearing behind them, still staring at the large doors that were closed, preventing him from entering. The shinobi then flew backwards and all collided with the doors with enough force to knock them unconscious and blow the doors off their hinges. Naruto was about to walk into the village when he came to a halt in the middle of his stride. He smiled as the shadow clone puffed out and he remembered what it had done. He quickly created another, then used the Hiraishin to teleport back to Wave. While the real Naruto went to Iwa to do what needed to be done, the clone returned to town and began cleaning up the mess he had made when he fought the Leaf Shinobi. He burned the bodies and destroyed the podium that was to be used as an execution ground because it was no longer needed and would never be needed again because the people here were peaceful. He stopped a Jiraiya spy from giving a full report of what had happened here and saw that the message stated that a strange man had killed off their forces by himself but had no idea who he was. He knew that this would help spread panic to the Leaf, so he sent it through the proper channels with Kyuubi's assistance by having the message secretly delivered to another of Jiraiya's spies, who would then pass it on to Jiraiya himself. When everything was cleared away, the people of the village decided to come out and celebrate the return of their hero, who had saved them for the second time, and Naruto couldn't help but notice Tsunami's quick lustful gazes as well as hear her whispering, "If only I was younger." Naruto warned the people that even though he had stopped the invasion force this time, Konoha would just send more out to attack and try to do what the first invasion force had failed to do. So Tizuna had a friend send word to Mifune in Iron Country to call in a favor that he owed Tizuna because they were old drinking buddies to aid them long enough so that they would not be attacked again until the war between the three villages was over. Mifune arrived within a few days, accompanied by a large group of samurai, to protect the people, while the people celebrated the entire week. Naruto was stopped by two more gate guards as he walked into the village of Iwa and away from the front gate that had been blasted open, a large metal construct protecting the hidden stone village. Halt! One exclaimed, frowning as he examined Naruto's hair and eyes. Please state your name and purpose for visiting this village. Namikaze Naruto here to see the Tsuchikage, he replied, using a name they'd recognize because it belonged to their sworn enemy. And Namikaze? The yellow flash, as in Namikaze Minato? One guard inquired, his skin paling to a hue normally reserved for a certain snake Sanin who hid in Rice country. Naruto frowned, hating his relationship with the man but needing the reputation it brought him, especially in Iwa. He was my father, yes. Several years into the training expedition in the Western Wastelands, Naruto was left alone while Kenshiro went to see an old college friend. During that time, he studied the arts of his clan and his father. In the middle of the session, he felt excruciating pain that forced both of his parents' spirits from his body, just as it had done to the Kyuubi himself. His mother had been overjoyed that they were alive again and had hugged her son, whom she adored with all her heart. Minato smiled as he realized they were no longer in the elemental countries. He inquired as to where they were and what had happened to Konoha, but Naruto growled and proceeded to explain his life up to that point and his plans for the future.
His mother had been very supportive of his life decisions, but his father had become enraged by them.
He demanded Naruto return home and begged for his old shinobi position and to protect the village as he had previously. Minato was too devoted to Konoha, and his devotion was stronger even in death. Nonetheless, Naruto told him that Konoha could burn in hell all he wanted. Minato then quickly prepared a seal to aid in the remolding of Naruto's mind, but Kushina noticed and confronted him about it. Minato told her to move, but she refused, so he shoved the Rasengan into her chest and said that Naruto was a weapon that had to protect his home no matter what. Minto then attempted to use the seal he had prepared for Naruto, but was stopped by Kushina's chakra chains, which held him in place. This gave Naruto plenty of time to break his arms, preventing him from using any jutsu. He went on to say that the Namikaze name would be forgotten over time, and that his children would never know who Minato was, and that he would be forgotten entirely in a few generations. Minato scowled as he said this, but Naruto simply tapped his brow with his finger and walked past him to his mother's dying body. Minato exploded behind him, but he didn't even look back. Naruto held his mother's body as she spoke her final words of love and encouragement to him to live his life as he wished. "Die Namikaze!" yelled one of the guards as they both rushed him. Naruto sighed and vanished, reappearing between the two, his hands whipping out and swatting them away. The two Iwa nin were thrown into the village walls in a blur, cracking the stone and losing consciousness. Naruto could have easily killed them, but he didn't want to do so right now. With those weaklings invading Wave and now these two, I really need to limit my strength even more. Naruto mused as he looked down at his hands. Unlike the wastelands with all the bandits and want-to-be rulers, the people here are just so fragile, I can't expect them to survive hits that the bandits would have shrugged off. Putting that thought to the side and returning to his current situation, Naruto focused his attention on the massive gate in front of him, his thoughts taking a more devious and fun-garnering turn. I might as well bring the cage to me instead of going to him. It'll save me time because I'd have to fight nearly every shinobi in Iwa just to get to him, and it'll be easier to convince him. Naruto raised his arm and extended a finger, channeling and focusing his chakra at the fingertip. He poured a lot of dark blue power into the technique and manipulated it into a ball the size of his head that was slowly growing in size over time. Naruto flicked his finger, launching the technique at the city gates, once the ball had roughly doubled in size. He had used his mentor's teachings to create a far more powerful version of his ranged energy attack. He used the Rasengan as a conduit to channel massive amounts of chakra into a projectile that could be as large or as small as he desired. The ball of energy struck the gate in a blur of blue light and slowly began to sink into the metal, melting the nearby material into a thick, gooey sludge made of melted metal. Naruto launched another small blast of energy at the gate after half of the ball had sunk into it, causing an immediate and terrifying chain reaction. The ball exploded with the force of 1,000 explosive tags, causing massive shockwaves to reverberate throughout the village and knocking many people over near the gate. Tsuchikage himself appeared on a nearby rooftop less than 10 seconds after the explosion, followed by a contingent of Jonin, Chunin, and Genin an instant later. When the dust settled, they were confronted with a terrifying sight, The massive gates that had protected the village for decades had been completely destroyed, leaving only a massive and spacious structure in their place. On the other side of the crater stood a man who resembled a warrior Onoki had fought in his youth, and the memory of that day had haunted him ever since. It was one of the reasons he surrendered when Minato attacked during the Third Shinobi War, because he suspected Minato had been trained by that man, even if only slightly. The kind of power he'd seen that man wield was not human in any way. "What is your name? What do you desire?" Tsuchikage yelled, his face calm but his eyes burning with rage, outlined with apparent fear because he was afraid that the monster of a man from his past had not only trained but also sent that student to finish what he had started so long ago. He was a short, elderly man with a large red nose, a triangular beard, and an angular mustache. Despite his comical appearance, Onoki was an extremely powerful shinobi, earning the title of Onoki of both scales and being regarded as one of the three pillars of the shinobi world, a title shared by only he, Sarutobi Hiruzen, and Salamander Hanzo. "I'm Namikaze Naruto, the son of Namikaze Minato." Naruto called back, his flinch at the claim suppressed. His response seemed to cause a lot of anxiety among the Iwa Nin, with many of them gasping and slipping into fighting stances, their combined killing intent being brushed off by the blonde. Onoki, on the other hand, seemed to calm down, his rage dissipating and his eyes focusing, the man either ready to speak or battle. He saw that, despite the fact that this young Namikaze had attacked his men, they were clearly still alive because they were in one piece and moving. "I'm here to discuss an alliance," Naruto continued, causing some of those who heard him to blink and growl. "Why would we want to join forces with Konoha?" Onoki returned the call, his eyes narrowed in thought. "Not to mention the fact that you not only destroyed our gate, which has stood the test of time since our village's founding, but you were also the son of our most despised enemy, Minato Namikaze." The blonde vanished from his position several dozen meters away and reappeared 10 feet away from the large group of shinobi, surprising and terrifying many with his impressive speed. Fortunately for many Iwa Nin, a signal from their cage halted their preemptive strike, rescuing them from the blonde's retaliatory carnage. Onoki was many things in life, but he was not a fool. Fighting this man would cost them far too many good men, and they needed those men to help their ally Kumo in the coming war. The gate, yes. That was mostly to catch your attention. Since it was either that or fighting my way to your office, and this seemed so much easier in the long run, Naruto replied sheepishly, his grin causing many of the assembled shinobi to growl angrily, similar to his father's. "Also, your guards felt compelled to attack me after discovering my identity, so I reasoned that destroying your gate would more than compensate." That elicited a small smirk from the elderly cage, the man's eyes glazing briefly as he visited a memory. "You appear to have misunderstood me as well," Naruto went on, drawing the cage from his mind. "I'm not a Konoha nin. In fact, I intend to watch Konoha burn to ashes. I've come here to ask that you ally with me because I have a plan that will greatly aid you in this war you're having with them." Many people were taken aback, completely unaware that the son of the most powerful Hokage sought to destroy his own village, a village both his parents died to protect. "Why would you want to destroy your father's village?" Onoki inquired, intrigued by the blonde's reasoning. "And if you were to succeed in your plan, why should we ally with you instead of simply killing you to end the bloodline of our sworn enemy?" "It's my father." The word was hurled with such venom and malice that a few of the Iwa Nin recoiled away from the blonde. "As you say, the village has made me its enemy for reasons I won't go into, and when I finally put my plan into action, you'll see that I'm a far better ally than enemy. My master told me about your fight with him a long time ago. And I was curious how your back was doing." Onoki's eyes narrowed at the unspoken threat, seeing the blonde in a slightly different light. "Very well, Namikaze, if you succeed in this plan of yours, what exactly do you want out of all of this?" Many of the gathered nin began to protest at this point, but a sharp look from their cage, as well as a chakra spike laced with killing intent, was enough to silence them. A wise decision to listen to me out, Naruto replied, slipping his hand into one of his pockets and making the various nin stiffen. All I ask in return is that you put an end to your feud with my family in the future. Let your hatred for the Namikaze name perish with my father, because I renounce it today and will never use it as my own again. I am an Uzumaki who wants to live my own life with my own family in the future without fear of Iwa attempting to kill them simply because I am of that man's bloodline. And as long as your village does not harm my family, they will have nothing to fear because I have nothing against you because I am no longer a shinobi and do not care about shinobi matters. The second and final wish I have is that once Fire Country has been conquered, I would like to personally remove the head of the Fire Daimyo. I'd also like to use this as an apology for your gate and proof of my dedication to our future alliance. With that, he slowly withdrew his hand, causing the shinobi to relax as he held a simple sealing scroll, which was quickly tossed to the elderly Kage. Onoki simply looked at the scroll warily before handing it to one of his jonin, who opened it and read it, as is standard procedure when dealing with neutral and enemy shinobi. After a few seconds, the man's eyes widened and his jaw dropped as he stared at the scroll. It's, he stuttered, unable to finish his sentence due to his awe. Get to work, man. Onoki snarled, irritated by the man's suspense-building behavior. It's the Rasengan instructions, as well as the Yondaime's speed training routine, Tsuchikage-sama. The man yelled, and everyone who heard him repeated his earlier expression. Snatching the scroll, Onoki stared at it for a few seconds as his men cheered behind him before turning his gaze to the blonde, a wide smile on his face. I look forward to our future alliance, Namikaze-san, Onoki said, reaching out his hand to the blonde. Naruto took the man's hand right away, his grin widening as he shook hands with the powerful Kage. Please address me as Naruto. As he patted the elderly Kage on the back, he said. Do you have any beer before I tell you about my plan to help you win this war? I'd kill someone right now for a drink. 1 week later.
Naruto spent a week in Iowa discussing his plans for Konoha with Onoki and the village council, as well as giving pointers to the many who attempted to learn the Rasengan, which accounted for more than 80% of the active shinobi roster.
Most Iwa nin were on the second stage of learning the technique by the end of the week, but it was a slow process because most of them found it difficult to complete the first stage alone. Naruto was quick to reassure them that because Jiraiya had taken 3 months to master the technique and the Iwa nin lacked the benefit of a shadow clone's assistance, it would take them a long time to fully master the Rasengan. Tsuchikage and the council ultimately decided that they would gladly ally with the blonde and assist with his plan. However, one of their conditions was that the alliance would only take effect once Naruto had completed his portion of it. In exchange, they would grant him sanctuary if he ever needed it. To keep the alliance secret and prevent Konoha from learning about their future plans, it was decided that Naruto would be entered into Iwa's bingo book as a criminal and enemy of the state. He also helped keep the alliance hidden by assisting them in eliminating all spies Jiraiya had within the village. On Naruto's suggestion, as he was becoming increasingly bored with politics, he was set up to fight a battalion of Iwa nin in order to determine his rank. Quite a challenge, as the last man to take on a battalion of Iwa's best had been the Yondaime Hokage himself. This battle would allow Naruto to show off his power, as well as prove once and for all that he had the strength. The battle was quick and gruesome, with the blonde blazing through his opponents and disabling them with his techniques in less than 2 minutes. 500 of Iwa's best, including Onoki of both scales, were all beaten down and killed, in a matter of minutes, proving the blonde's heritage and bold claims. In the end, he was designated an SS rank threat with a simple, flee on sight, order, only the second in Iwa's history, the first being his father. With that display, the citizens of Iwa couldn't help but believe in the blonde's chances of assisting them in bringing down Konoha. This, of course, had led to much partying and drinking. The bingo books were distributed the following day, and Naruto left Iwa feeling very proud of himself. Konoha, 3 days later. Tsunade had spent much of her time arguing with the village council and elders for nearly 2 weeks following the sudden reappearance of a certain blonde, according to the only surviving member of the Wave Invasion Force. It was only the revelation of Naruto's ancestry that prevented the updating of his bingo book entry and the release of the Hunter Nin, because they couldn't spare any Nin if they were to survive the coming war, resulting in Tsunade's victory, much to the chagrin of many council members who wanted him found and enslaved to serve and protect Konoha. However, as far as the council was concerned, they couldn't put the son of their beloved Yondaime in the bingo books. What would Iwa do with such information? They were also unable to send Hunter Nin after him because, as Tsunade mentioned, they were too short-handed to do so, and the enemy would almost certainly kill those Hunter Nin if given the chance, because a dead Konoha shinobi only made Konoha weaker in the long run. In the end, they decided to list him as an A-rank threat to be captured on sight, hoping that someone would be able to defeat and return the errant Namikaze. If it was completed, they could use him to re-establish their alliances and better prepare for the war. And they believed that anyone who went after him would have no trouble apprehending him because he was weak when he was allegedly killed, and in their minds he had hidden away for 7 years by hiding his chakra and wouldn't have trained in any way in his pursuit to stay hidden. This belief of theirs was dashed only a few days later. Tsunade found herself repeating the same actions she'd taken in the previous few days, namely hunkering down in her office and drinking sake, her thoughts revolving around Naruto and her plans to retake control of him in order to reclaim their alliance. Shizune barged in at this point, the younger woman visibly flustered and shocked. "You have to see this, Tsunade-sama," Shizune yelled, waving a book in the air. "I'm not in the mood for more paperwork, Shizune." Tsunade responded with a tired groan, her head dropping to the desk. She hadn't been sleeping well for a few months because the thought of being attacked was constantly on her mind. "This is about Naruto." Shizune persisted unabated. "He appears in Iwa's bingo book." "What? Let's see." Tsunade yelled, leaping to her feet and grabbing the book from her assistant's grasp, quickly flipping to the back pages. "You'll find it on page 3. Shizune pointed out, much to Tsunade's surprise, that only the most dangerous threats were placed at the front of the bingo books, and that pages 1 and 2 were simply introductory paragraphs. When she turned the page, she was surprised to see that it was an entry for Naruto, with an image of the boy in the top left corner that looked nothing like he did a year ago. He had shorter hair and was much more muscular than when he left the village. Her racing heart was not calmed by the entry below the image. Naruto's name is Namikaze. So they know what his real name is. Tsunade blanched, horrified that the information had leaked despite her best efforts to keep it hidden. Now the entire world is aware of Naruto's ancestry. We'll look even more foolish to the rest of the world if we try to kill off Minato's son. SS is my rank. Her eyes widened to new proportions as a result of this. That can't be just because of his father's identity. Onoki is far too smart and cunning to hold such a grudge and place him in the book solely on that knowledge. What have you done, Naruto? Description: age: between 20 and 21 years old. Height: 6 feet 6 inches to 6 feet 8 inches. Hair color: blonde, short. Sapphire blue pupils. Typically dressed in a dark blue jacket. Has incredible taijutsu abilities that no one can match. The village hidden in the leaves was the last affiliated village. Before leaving the village, your rank was genin. Reason for entry: accused of destroying the village gate. Charged with the slaughter of 500 Iwa nin of Chunin and higher rank. Sandaime Tsuchikage has been charged with assault and attempted murder against Onoki of both scales. What did he do? Tsunade became enraged as she read the entry, her eyes widening. This made her feel conflicted because, on the one hand, he had unknowingly helped Konoha by killing off so many Iwa shinobi that they would need time to rebuild their numbers and might even call off the war entirely because they wouldn't be able to help Kumo as much as they would like with that many shinobi gone. On the other hand, she was irritated because Naruto was never meant to have this kind of power, and once he was captured, his mind would be erased so they could start over and re-educate him into the mindless weapon that they demanded of him, but not before documenting everything he knew so they could strengthen themselves and find where he hid the funds he stole from the village when he left. How powerful are you, Naruto? Not only did he defeat an Iwa Nin battalion, but he also fought and survived a battle with Onoki. Extraordinary speed and strength are known abilities. This unknown speed technique is unrecognizable, capable of speeds comparable to the Yondaime Hokage's Flying Thunder God and the Yondaime Reikage's Lightning Armor. Superhuman taijutsu abilities. Shadow clones are an expert's tool, capable of a wide range of powerful and seal-free jutsu. If you value your life, flee at first sight and do not engage the target. Below that was a chart estimating the blonde's abilities. The genjutsu section had a question mark, but the taijutsu, kenjutsu, and ninjutsu sections were off the charts, indicating that this was an SS rank shinobi. Tsunade read and reread the entry several times before turning to her desk and activating a seal, summoning one of Jiraiya's toads, the creature simply staring at her as it awaited orders. Find Jiraiya and tell him to drop everything and go find Naruto. I need him to be found and brought here to protect this village from Iwa. Tsunade demanded a salute from the toad before it vanished in a puff of smoke. Tsunade turned to Shizune and made a decision. She would have to update their bingo books as well, or Konoha would be made to look foolish due to their lack of information. Update our bingo books with the information provided here, add anything we know that they don't, and promote him to S rank with a capture-only reward. We must keep the brat alive. Hello, Tsunade-sama. Shizune replied, then dashed off to finish her orders. Tsunade sank back into her desk and poured another glass of sake, her thoughts continuing to revolve around a certain blonde brat she had grown to despise over the years. Her hatred for the brat grew even stronger after she reported him to the Fire Daimyo, who then ordered her to find him and offer him anything he wanted to stay in the village, including the seat of Hokage if he so desired. And once the war was over and their alliances were restored, she was to find a way to control him and use him as a puppet leader so that their allies would not abandon them for the second time. Tsunade dreaded allowing the brat to sit in that seat of power for even a single second, but her orders were clear, and she could only find quiet satisfaction in knowing that he would suffer in the long run because he would be controlled like the tool he was in the end. Close to Suna, Naruto stood in the vast desert of Wind Country, hood up and bandana over his face to keep the sands out of his eyes, as he felt it was the polar opposite of the western wastelands in many ways, yet the same in others. The harsh winds, sand everywhere, and the various creatures, including humans, who had long since learned to survive the harsh environmental hazards it held for many years. The Hokuto user, on the other hand, didn't care because he was on his way to see his friend and time was of the essence because he wanted to go home for a bit and spend time with his wife instead of having to send a shadow clone and being bombarded by the memories when she drained them dry. He couldn't figure out how she was able to hold out for so long, but he guessed she was repressing her sexual urges like a floodgate that he had just blown open, and she acted on impulse. He wasn't complaining in any way. And now he was just a few hundred feet away from Suna, and there was already a smell in the air of humans, which he had grown accustomed to after smelling it frequently in the wastelands. It smelled like an attack on a village because there was a distinct smell of smoke on the horizon that was far too strong to be just a simple fire of some sort, as he knew Gaara would never let anyone boss burn the village down and or sink the village in any way because the sand here was perfect for Gaara to use to aid his village if they tried. Naruto remembered a lot about the one-tailed Jinchuriki, and he knew Suna was the place he should go to see a long-lost friend. So, what gave him the impression that something bad had just happened to Gaara? His instincts had never failed him before, so he began to worry about his friend's safety. Speeding up once more to close the gap between himself and Suna, he discovered that the village had recently been attacked, as evidenced by tall tale signs of smoke seen from several places, and came to a halt when he was soon surrounded by Suna shinobi. Each of them armed, they looked at him suspiciously, knowing he could be an enemy sent to attack them while they were weak from their recent attack, because they had never seen anyone like him before in terms of clothing, complexion, and overall muscly form. Other than the rakeage, this man was clearly not him. Identify yourself. A Suna shinobi on Naruto's right said. I've come to meet Sabaku no Gaara. I arrived at a bad time. Judging by the smoke behind your walls when I was traveling here, Naruto looked behind the Suna shinobi in front of him to see Hatake Kakashi, Uchiha Sasuke, Haruno Sakura, and some pale-skinned boy who could almost rival Orochimaru if they were standing next to each other. With the exception of the phony smile. Who are you? Sakura asked, as she saw this large stranger just stare at her with his covered face, and saw Sasuke narrow her eyes at the man because his face looked familiar to him in some way that he was unsure of, and he felt enraged about it for some reason. My name isn't particularly important right now. I came here to speak with Sabaku no Gaara. What exactly happened here? Asked Naruto, as he kept the nagging feeling in the back of his mind to annihilate the four-leaf shinobi and make himself a target before carrying out his plan. The Akatsuki have kidnapped the Tsuchikage. We've come to assist Gaara's siblings in saving him because they require superior shinobi to do what they clearly cannot do themselves. Sasuke smirked, hoping to impress this man in front of them and to make himself known to foreigners entering Suna. If his name became famous enough, people would flock to their village in droves to see him, or at least that's how it played out in his mind. So Gaara is now the Tsuchikage, huh? When I save my old friend, I must congratulate myself, Naruto thought to himself before turning around, sensing where the Akatsuki members had taken Gaara in the distance. Wait. You claim to be friends with him. When was this? Tamari, who had walked in on their conversation, said Gaara had only ever had one friend, and the last time she checked, Naruto was dead, or so the rumors had it for the past several years. Not long ago. I haven't seen him in a long time, and I'm sure he doesn't recognize me. However, I know that after we talk, he'll remember who I am and embrace me in friendship, just as I did so many years ago with him. Naruto began walking away with his hands in his pockets, as he always did before disappearing from sight in the western wastelands, like some kind of ghost or spirit that became a legend, just as his mentor had done before him. Was that some kind of jutsu? Sakura looked at Kakashi, who was also perplexed because he had never seen anything like it. He mentally cursed himself for not attempting to copy it with his eyes so that he could teach it to Sasuke when he had the time. But he had no intention of doing so because they had been sent on this mission to assist Gaara. The mission could end with Gaara being so grateful that they had aided him in his survival that they would aid them in the coming war, or they could eliminate him and subdue the Biju in order to seal it within Sasuke and add to his already impressive strength. They had another shinobi named Yamato who could suppress the beast already on his way to the Akatsuki's hideout. After learning that Naruto was still alive and had done what he did to Iwa, he devoted himself to senjutsu training and quickly mastered it. He was now prepared to fight Naruto and defeat him, finally settling the score between them. We'll learn more about him later. You three, come on. We must find the two Akatsuki members and save Gaara before the new guy does. As a cold shivering sensation crawled up Kakashi's spine, the Junin felt as if he had just missed something important.
So that's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe to the channel for more awesome stories like this. Thank you. See you all in my next video.